Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Adams. I'm a G1 oncologist at the University of New Mexico, and I'm here today to present a program about the new SGO GOG Foundation Bridges Research Initiative. I'm joined by Dr. Amanda Nichols-Fader, who's the president of SGO this year, and by Dr. Tom Herzog, who's the president of the GOG Foundation. So I'd just like to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves and say hello, and then we'll talk more about the program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adams. As president of the SGO and as a fellow gynecologic oncologist, I'm really honored to be here with both with you and Dr. Herzog and in partnership with the OCRA to speak with you about our steadfast commitment to developing the next generation of clinical trialists and enhancing patient outcomes for those with ovarian cancer. At SGO, our mission is really clear, to advance the prevention, early detection, and treatment of those diagnosed with or at risk for gynecologic cancers, including ovarian cancer. And central to this mission is our dedication to partnering with incredible stakeholders like the GOG Foundation, the OCRA, the Foundation for Women's Cancer, to foster career development, training, collaboration, and excellence in trial research through the Bridges 2.0 program. And we're incredibly proud to be collaborating again with the GOG Foundation, the premier organization conducting clinical trials around the world, and with the OCRA together to work to improve outcomes for patients. And I think this united effort is going to be really crucial in pushing the boundaries of what's possible in our field and to really help us realize the promise of better survival and quality of life for our patients.
Thanks, Dr. Vader. Dr. Herzog?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for this opportunity. Amanda, well said. We're so excited from the GOG Foundation to be partnering with the SGO and with OCRA. And we are so aligned on the importance of training our next generation of trialists. People always ask why are trials important? Why do we even think about clinical trials? And I'm the old person in this mix here. So I can tell you when I was doing fellowship in early career, for ovarian cancer, for example, we were looking at survival 5-year survivals that fell well short of 2 years. It wasn't until GOG 111, that was 2000, that was published in New England Journal of Medicine. We were looking then at where we are with the final OS on that anyway. 1996 was the original. But looking at that, we were at 25 months for the control arm. I mean, not all that exceptional. And now you look, Apollo 1, for example, looking at all comers, you were looking at something like 60 months, 58 months. And now with some of the other trials, such as Solo 1 and that, obviously a select group, but you get all the way out to not even reaching it at 7 years. So it's really amazing. And all that's really been powered through organizations like yours and the power of being able to do clinical trials the right way. So we need those people to be able to complete them because that's how we make progress.
Thank you both for joining. I'm going to keep moving forward to talk more about how the Bridges Research Initiative is advancing the goals that Dr. Herzog just told you about with demonstrable improvements in survival and outcomes for patients. As you just heard, the way that novel therapeutics are brought to the clinic is through clinical research and clinical trials. And shown here is a really pared down schematic of the translational pipeline that advances new therapeutics from the lab, from preclinical studies, through first-in-human trials, and then phase 2 trials looking for evidence of efficacy, and then large phase 3 trials, which are really looking to confirm that a novel therapeutic is beneficial for patients, and in some cases, testing to see whether it's better than what we've been using already. And then if things go well, we present those data to the Food and Drug Administration for final approval of a new therapeutic that can be incorporated into clinical practice. And that's really the goal of all of this research, is to increase the number of treatments for cancer and to improve the efficacy of the treatments that are available for people with gynecologic cancers. And you can see at the bottom some of the benefits of clinical research for participants beyond the altruistic component, which is an enormous component of clinical research that relies on patient volunteers to conduct these clinical trials to advance the field, both for their own treatment as well as for improving treatment options for others. Participation in a clinical trial might also present someone with additional options for treatment that wouldn't be available otherwise outside of a trial. and in some cases provides people with access to new therapeutics, cutting edge therapeutics that they wouldn't be able to get outside of a clinical trial. So as someone who treats patients with gynecologic cancers, I really appreciate the opportunity to offer people multiple options for treatment and to have more treatments to offer them through participation in clinical trials, as well as the hope that this will move our field forward and advance our understanding of tumor biology and the treatment of these cancers. So unfortunately, there has been a shortage in the decrease in the number of clinical trials available for people with gynecologic cancers over the last couple of decades. And you can see some of the trends here in the figures showing a decrease in the number of trials focused on gynecologic cancers and a decrease in the participation of women in clinical trials, which accounts for most of the people who enroll in gynecologic cancer trials. These data are a little bit old. You can see that they end in 2016, but unfortunately, there hasn't been a big recovery in these numbers over the last 6 to 8 years. And in fact, the COVID pandemic made some of these statistics worse because the pandemic shutdowns made it more difficult for people to travel for treatment or to access and participate in clinical trials. Despite these challenges of COVID, however, there have been some interesting developments that were made possible in part because of the COVID pandemic that are worth highlighting. One thing that the COVID pandemic taught us was that we need to really increase the support for people who are engaged in clinical research to maintain a diverse workforce who can participate in clinical trial development and who can contribute to the science behind clinical trials. But another part of the COVID pandemic experience has been that there had to be a very rapid response or change in the way that trials were conducted in order to complete trials that were underway during the pandemic. And that has really advanced some new paradigms for clinical research that in some ways have made the focus on patient experience in a way that it hadn't been previously. In particular, there were changes in the rules of clinical trials that allowed patients to be evaluated by their own provider who might be closer to home with the travel restrictions that were implemented during COVID. And there were allowances to have study drugs, in some cases, mailed directly to patients if these were oral drugs like a pill that could be mailed to patients. And these changes sound maybe small, but were big changes in the way that clinical trials were developed and conducted, with a priority on reducing the hurdles to participation for potential subjects or patients who wanted to access novel treatments through trials. And so I think this creates a real opportunity to think more broadly about how clinical research is conducted and how we can continue to break down the barriers to trial participation to ensure that new treatment opportunities are available to all patients with gynecologic cancers who might benefit from them. And so partly in response to these changes, and also in response to a real call to arms within our field, we developed the Bridges Research Initiative. And it's called Bridges because the annual meeting for the Society of Gynecologic Oncologists was the Building Bridges, Breaking Barriers meeting in 2022. And so we were building on that theme, really trying to link stakeholders and people who are invested in gynecologic cancer research to advance more trials for the patients that we treat and to improve opportunities for treatment across the field. And so what this is a longitudinal training program for early career faculty in gynecologic oncology. And this is curriculum-based to teach new faculty, new GYN oncologists or medical oncologists, or in some cases, radiation oncologists, how to develop a clinical trial, how to think about what questions can be asked with certain trial designs, and how to move a new concept forward from an idea to trial implementation, to patient enrollment. And our goal was really to increase the number of trials available to the patients we all treat, and also, as I said, to advance the science in the field by developing this cohort of investigators who would be committed to clinical research and well-trained in clinical research methods, who could design and conduct clinical trials at their sites as well as across sites through these collaborations within the Bridges network. We also have been prioritizing the use of new trial designs and new paradigms for clinical research to really overcome some of the hurdles to participation that have historically restricted some people's access to clinical trial treatment. And our goal, of course, is to accelerate the development of novel therapeutics to improve the outcomes of patients with gynecologic cancers and to really improve the long-term survival, like what you were hearing Dr. Herzog saying, that through research, the new treatments that have come forward have really markedly improved the overall survival in that example of patients with ovarian cancer. That's our goal, and we want to get it accomplished as quickly as possible to make access to these new therapeutics available as soon as possible. I'd like to introduce two of the participants in the first Bridges cohort. These are both early career GYN oncologists. Dr. Britt Erickson is at the University of Minnesota. She's an associate professor there, and she is the principal investigator for a national clinical trial currently. And Dr. Lindsay Brubaker is a faculty member at the University of Colorado who has a research lab focused on ovarian cancer and has proposed a new clinical trial based on her research in the lab. And they'll both talk briefly about how the Bridges Research Initiative complements their training in gynecologic oncology and how they see it as a critical component to advance their career in research.
Fellowship is such a jam-packed time in training, learning surgery and patient care, and sort of just the basics of how to take care of patients with gynecologic malignancies. And there really isn't a lot of clinical trial training, even though that's how we base the foundation of so much of our practice. And so really understanding how to design trials, how to write them, and I think more importantly, just like the logistics of what to do next and where to go and where to get funding and these sorts of things. I mean, none of that is formally taught as part of fellowship. So as I've been in my early career, I found that all that is sort of learning on the job, and so to have a curriculum that sort of focuses on that and helps us understand really what we need to be thinking about in clinical trials and what those next steps are, I think is a major gap actually that's being filled by the Bridges program.
The Bridges Initiative is an incredible opportunity for junior faculty and fellows to have an exposure to what it takes to develop clinical trials, both from the preclinical side into the more translational work, and then actual protocol development and bringing a concept to clinical trial. The mentorship that I've experienced just in the first few months of the initiative has been beyond what I've seen ever before in my career, and it's a space to be able to ask your questions and propose new ideas and try to collaborate with our peers like across the country. And it really, another piece of it is that it provides a foundation, a didactics foundation in terms of the basics of what you need to know to really begin this journey of either becoming a clinical trialist or a physician scientist and building your career in the direction of research with the support and mentorship required.
All right, so the overarching vision for the Bridges Research Initiative is to maximize the impact of clinical trials. And we hope to do this through broad engagement, as you've heard, with multiple stakeholders, expert clinical mentors, early career faculty, national clinical trial consortia, pharmaceutical partners, and foundation partners, all of the groups that are interested in improving outcomes for patients with gynecologic cancers, to create this network of investigators who will design and implement new clinical trials. As you've heard me mention, we have also prioritized strategies and trial designs that will improve access to novel therapeutics. It's very important to us to encourage scholars to integrate translational research into their clinical trials so that we can learn more with each trial about how to identify who is most likely to respond to a new treatment regimen and how to understand outcomes from clinical trials and what it might teach us about tumor biology to inform the next generation of trials following on that. As I mentioned, we're piloting novel clinical trial designs, including adaptive trial designs and strategies to use information about response from patients who are early enrollers to assign patients to treatment cohorts as the trial progresses to make sure that people are more likely to get the trial regimen that will be beneficial for them. And then this real emphasis on collaboration as a source of innovation and building these networks across academic centers, clinical practices that are community practices, and integration of foundation partners, patient advocates, and pharmaceutical partners. And the goal, of course, is to support the development of clinical trialists who will lead the field and really improve outcomes for people with gynecologic cancers. And next, I'd like to introduce two of the mentors for the first Bridges iteration, just to illustrate the kinds of experts that we were able to recruit for this program and the enthusiasm of the people who participated as mentors. As I mentioned earlier, each early career faculty scholar was matched with a mentoring team with 4 expert clinical mentors, so 6 scholars to 4 mentors, to help them develop their clinical trial concepts. And so we worked hard to recruit people who are leaders in our field and who have been responsible for the kinds of trials that change treatments for people with gynecologic cancers. And so you'll hear now from Dr. Kunle Odunsi, who's the Cancer Center Director at the University of Chicago Comprehensive Cancer Center and the Dean of Oncology at the University of Chicago. And then you'll hear from Dr. Shannon Weston, who leads the Phase 1 program for gynecologic oncology at the MD Anderson Cancer Center.
My name is Kunle Odunsi. I'm the director of the University of Chicago Comprehensive Cancer Center. I also serve as the Dean for Oncology in the Biological Sciences Division of the University of Chicago. I have been interested in translating basic lab discoveries to the clinic in the form of conducting first-in-human clinical trials for several years. And my experience includes cancer immunotherapy trials, cancer vaccines, adoptive immunotherapies, adoptive T-cell transfer therapies, as well as other forms of immune modulation. I became interested in this Bridges program because it's a very unique and innovative program that is likely to allow us to mentor the next generation of clinical trialists in gynecologic oncology.
Hello, my name is Shannon Weston, and I am currently a professor and the Director of Early Drug Development and Phase 1 trials at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center in the Department of Gynecologic Oncology and Reproductive Medicine. And it has been my honor to serve as the principal investigator on a number of trials, predominantly early drug development, which is where my heart is. However, I've also participated and led Phase 3 trials as well. One of my other great passions is to incorporate translational endpoints into clinical trials so we can really move the science forward and make a difference for our patients. The reason I became an SGO Bridges mentor is I have been the beneficiary of multiple wonderful mentors, and I really wanted to pay it forward to make the most for our patients.
In addition, it was important to us to include people who have an interest in basic science and translational science research in the laboratory as mentors for the Bridges scholars. In an effort to make sure that the scholars have an understanding of how lab-based science can be incorporated into clinical research, and more importantly, how information from clinical trials can be brought back to the lab to help us ask additional questions about, for example, mechanisms of action of new drugs, or biomarkers to identify people likely to respond from drugs, or factors that might influence someone's experience on a particular new regimen, side effects or treatment outcomes, things like that. And so I'd like to introduce 3 of the translational science scientists who participated as mentors for the Bridges program. You'll hear from Dr. Catherine Fu, who's an associate professor at the University of California in San Francisco. You'll hear from Lisa Barolette, who is a faculty member at the University of Wisconsin Cancer Center. And then you'll hear from Vicki Bay-Jump, who's a professor at the University of North Carolina Cancer Center. And all of these are fantastic scientists whose work is funded by the National Institute of Health.
Hi, my name is Catherine Fu. I'm an associate professor in the John A. Kerner Chair in Gynecologic Oncology at the University of California, San Francisco. I'm the transitional co-chair for the Uterine Corpus Committee, and I also have been or currently am an investigator or a co-PI in 3 investigator-initiated trials focusing on endometrial cancer, and really focusing on the translational research and answering whether or not we can identify blood-based markers that could better correlate to who would respond to immunotherapy and endometrial cancer.
Hi, my name is Lisa Barolette. I am a gynecologist at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I am a translational researcher. I feel like the SGO Bridges program is important because research can be an uphill battle, and I think that having clinician scientists is really valuable. We can imagine the endpoints that are going to make the most difference to our patients day to day, and we can help create the science that are going to answer the hardest questions.
Hi, I'm Vicki Bay Jump, and I'm a GYN oncologist at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. My research has focused on obesity and metabolic targeted therapies for endometrial cancer using animal models, translational trials, and fortunately and ultimately treatment trials as well. I really wanted to become a Bridges mentor, as I've had many incredible mentors during my academic career via my home institution, SGO, and NRG Oncology, and thus I'm excited to give back in this role. In my role as an SGO Bridge mentor, I most look forward to helping young investigators develop their first clinical and translational studies that will hopefully lead to innovative trials for our patients and critically train our next generation of GYN oncology clinical and translational trialists.
Okay, so I am delighted to tell you that we were able to recruit a cohort of 30 scholars for the first year of Bridges. And that these scholars represented 23 different academic and clinical medical centers with broad geographic representation across the entire country, as well as Canada. And important to us, this included GYN oncologists as well as medical oncologists and radiation oncologists. And these are all either early career faculty within their first 10 years of their first faculty appointment, or senior fellows completing their training in oncology. And importantly, these 30 scholars introduced 30 clinical trial concepts as part of their participation in the Bridges program. And in this particular case, the majority were ovarian cancer trials, 17 ovarian cancer trials, but you can see that there were also new trials in endometrial cancer, cervical cancer, and some other interventional trials that were developed by the Bridges scholars. And these have all advanced through the program to the point that some have already launched and started enrolling patients, and others are under evaluation by the national consortium groups, such as the GOG and the NRG, as well as some are likely to be launched in collaboration with pharmaceutical partners. So we're really excited about the outcomes of the trials that were developed by the scholars in this first Bridges cohort. Here's a picture of the first Bridges cohort at their first in-person meeting with the scholars and the mentors together. And this was in Orlando, Florida, concurrent with the NRG annual meeting. And you can see that the Bridges program was highlighted at the Society for Gynecologic Oncology annual meeting. You can see some pictures below of mentors giving presentations and of the scholars working together in mentoring groups. And then this is a screenshot of a tweet sent out by two of the Bridges scholars at that meeting, highlighting their experience with Bridges. Importantly, one of the sessions for the first year of Bridges was dedicated to access to clinical trials, and specifically to a session that collaborated with the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance to bring patient advocates on board to evaluate the trial concepts developed by some of the Bridges scholars. So it was really important to us to ensure that the trials that were being developed would minimize the barriers to participation for potential patients who would be interested in the trials. And so the way we addressed this was to invite patient advocates recruited through the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance to review some of the trial concepts and to provide feedback to the scholars about what components of their trial was likely to be a burden to patients, what parts of the trials were particularly interesting to a patient as someone who might participate, what was appealing to them, and what to think about as they advance their concepts further. And this was led by Tracy Moore, who's the Vice President of Support and Education at the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance. And it was one of the most engaging, memorable sessions of the entire year, because the advocates who participated were really remarkable and were able to provide feedback to the scholars that in some cases was kind of surprising. For example, one of the scholars was proposing a novel cancer vaccine that was fairly complex and would require a lot of visits for initial setup and treatment. And I thought that that might have been a barrier to participation, but there was so much enthusiasm from the advocates about the concept of a cancer vaccine that they really provided meaningful feedback to the scholar about his concept, and generated a discussion with all of the Bridges scholars as well as the mentors about things to consider as a trial is designed to ensure that it's not creating undue burden on patients while still advancing concepts that are really exciting and provide a lot of hope about their potential efficacy for cancer treatment. One of the memorable pieces of feedback we got was from the statistician who works as a Bridges mentor. She has designed many clinical trials in gynecologic oncology that have changed the practice. But she said hearing from people who had participated on clinical trials was a new experience for her and was really moving for her to hear about their commitment to the broader research mission, as well as their experience as participants looking for novel treatment opportunities for themselves. And so that was a wonderful collaboration with the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance, and a session that we will plan to have with every single Bridges cohort moving forward. We set some metrics for ourselves to evaluate the return on investment of this program, or to evaluate the success of the program. And I'm delighted to say that the scholars from the first Bridges cohort just really exceeded all expectations in this regard. Multiple of the Bridges concepts have now been introduced through the National Trial Consortia, such as the NRG Oncology Group, which is the national organization that runs clinical trials supported by the National Institute of Health and the National Cancer Institute. These trials are open across the country. They are supported, as I said, through the NIH, and it's a very prestigious way to move a trial forward, to have the support of an organization like that and to have it be advanced through multiple committees that are designed to rigorously review the trials. So the fact that the Bridges concepts have advanced for review through NRG is a real accomplishment and a testament to the hard work of our scholars. In addition, some of the Bridges trials have been developed with pharmaceutical support, and one has already launched and started enrolling patients. Actually, 3 have already launched and started enrolling patients at 2 different institutions. In addition, the first cohort of Bridges scholars have been the recipients of multiple prestigious career development awards to provide them with grant support for protected time committed to research as they launch their careers. And these include grants from the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance, as well as from the National Cancer Institute, that are really a testament to their commitment to research, as well as to their accomplishments to date. 15 of the Bridges scholars have joined the editorial board for our flagship journal, Gynecologic Oncology, and there are multiple manuscripts under development or in submission, authored by Bridges scholars, as well as Bridges mentors, and a combination of both. So we're really overwhelmed by the success of this group and really excited about how much can be accomplished when we bring together experts in the field with early career faculty who are motivated and committed to clinical research. I'd like you to hear from 2 Bridges alums about their experience in the Bridges program. The first will be Travis Sims, who's a faculty member in the Division of Gynecologic Oncology at the MD Anderson Cancer Center. And then you'll hear from Tara Berman, who's now at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute.
Bridges is an amazing program. One of the memories I have of that program is that when I walked into the room, just seeing all of the leaders in our field together, coming together to mentor the next generation in clinical trial design was very powerful. The year has been exciting. I'm very happy that I had 2 trials that I was able to start through the Bridges program, and lucky enough both are now open at my institution. But even besides that, it's really the mentorship and the relationships that I've built with my mentees that I hope to continue in the future.
I would say don't even think about it, just apply, because just being in the space and being in the same room as these brilliant minds in our field, even if you don't follow the program and you have a side conversation that helps bring to light some elements that you hadn't maybe thought about for clinical trial design or another idea or angle, just interacting with these brilliant people has been an unparalleled experience for me personally.
And then finally, we've had some really wonderful feedback from the mentors. You heard already from several of the mentors about their motivation for participating in the Bridges program, But one of the things that we didn't expect was that this experience has developed new collaborations across institutions among the mentors and the scholars. So here's an example of some comments that were made by one of the mentors talking about how her participation in the Bridges program catalyzed work both in the lab with collaborations across institutions, as well as her participation in a national phase 3 clinical trial, which is scheduled to launch shortly through the NRG. And so this network of investigators has probably been the most valuable outcome of this initiative, along with the individual trials and the opportunity to collaborate across stakeholder groups. So based on the success of the first year of the Bridges program, we've now launched what we're calling Bridges 2.0, which is an expanded program that takes the best of the first version of Bridges and then expands it to a 2-year program to fill a gap that was highlighted by participants, which was a need for real-world instruction. How do you finance a trial? How do you get a trial launched? How do you oversee the regulatory requirements of a trial? And how do you build a clinical trial program at your institution? And so building that into the program, we've added a second year along with this collaboration with the Gynecologic Oncology Group Foundation. And we've reduced the size of the Bridges cohort so that we can really maintain an individualized mentoring experience across this 2-year period with the participants. We had a lot of interest in the program with the second year, and we recruited 18 participants, as well as faculty, all of whom were faculty for the first Bridges program who returned for a second cohort experience. And so here are the mentors for Bridges 2.0. You can see that these are leaders in the field who have been responsible for some of the practice-changing clinical trials in gynecologic cancer and who are experts representing academic institutions across the country, as well as 2 statisticians who have really been instrumental in the design and development and conduct of clinical trials in gynecologic cancers with the national consortium groups. And we're delighted to be working with these people again and look forward to developing the program with them as it expands to the 2-year version. Here are the new Bridges scholars. I've highlighted where they come from on the map. It is an international program with 1 participant from the University of Toronto. We have scholars from the University of Nebraska, from the University of West Virginia, from MD Anderson Cancer Center, from Hopkins Cancer Center, from all over the country, as you can see. And again, we've ensured that we have representation by gynecologic oncologists, medical oncologists, and a radiation oncologist. And the majority of these are early career faculty, but there are some select senior fellows who are completing their training who are participating in the Bridges program. As I mentioned, with the 2-year program, the first year is focused on concept development and study design and really the science of clinical research to develop the clinical trials that the Bridges participants applied with as part of their application process for the program. And year 2 is focused on study implementation and all of the real world and practical considerations to make sure that a trial is successfully launched and completed and is compliant with all of the regulations that come along with clinical research. And with this expansion, I'm really happy to say that we've also expanded our collaboration with the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance. You can see that the mission of the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance really aligns with the goals of the Bridges program. And in acknowledgement of this, we are so happy to be working with the OCRA scholars to incorporate them in this network. So as you know, the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance provides career development grants for early career faculty, primarily people who are focused on lab-based research, translational scientists, many of whom are PhDs. And since we are prioritizing the integration of science in the clinical trials that are developed through the Bridges program, we have arranged with the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance to integrate their new grantees into the program so that we can have early stage translational scientists get to know early stage clinical investigators to look for opportunities for collaboration across the 2 sort of sides of research in our field, and to really start to build collaborations from the beginning of these people's careers and to build out the network to include scientists with a focus on laboratory-based investigations. And so the plan is to have the new grantees, who will find out about their grant awards in January, join us at one of the in-person meetings in the spring so they can present their science to the Bridges scholars. And as I said, look for opportunities to collaborate together, either on correlative studies linked with the clinical trials that the Bridges scholars have proposed, or potentially develop novel projects together that will link the expertise of the translational scientists with some of the clinical perspective of the Bridges scholars. And so we're looking forward to this part of the program and to expanding this collaboration as we move forward. So in summary, what I hope we've conveyed is that this program is really designed to improve outcomes for people with gynecologic cancers by bringing together multiple stakeholders across the translational pipeline: translational scientists, clinical investigators, expert clinicians, expert investigators, biostatisticians, patient advocates, and foundations to really build these networks that will develop clinical trials to introduce new therapeutics and really advance the science in gynecologic cancer. And so I appreciate the opportunity to introduce this to the OCRA audience. And I would like to thank the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance for collaborating with us on this initiative and for their support for the Bridges program. This is a much nicer bridge. This is in New Mexico, which is where I'm from. And at the bottom, you can see the website if you'd like more information about the program. Please get in touch if you have any questions or would like to provide some feedback for us or some comments about the program. We would welcome that. Thanks so much.